Salam, brother boss. Inshallah, we're waiting for Sheikh to join and we'll start in about 3 to 5 minutes.
Alaikum salam. How are you?
I'm good. Which surah are you planning to recite?
At-Takwir.
Okay, all right. I'll make sure I pull that up. Thank you.
Okay.
Salam, everyone. So for those who have just joined us, we will be starting in about 3 to 5 minutes. Sorry for the delay.
About through the power of their voice.
Salam, Brother Bas. So, inshallah, we'll start with Quran. Sheikh is on his way joining the link that I provided him. So, Brother Bas, whenever you're ready.
Okay. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما
Allahumma salli ala.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إذا الشمس كورت وإذا النجوم انكدرت وإذا الجبال سيرت وإذا الإشار أطلت وإذا الوحوش حشرت وإذا البحار سجرت وإذا النفوس زوجت وإذا الموءودة سئلت بأي ذنب قتلت إذا الصحف نشرت وإذا السماء كشطت وإذا الجحيم سعرت وإذا الجنة أزلفت علمت نفس ما أحضرت فلا أقسم بالخنس الجوار الكنس والليل إذا أسأس الصبح إذا تنفس إنه لقول رسول كريم ذي قوة عند ذي العرش المكين مطاع ثم أمين وما صاحبكم بمجنون ولقد رآه بالأفق المبين وما هو على الغيب بضنين وما هو بقول الشيطان الرجيم أين تذهبون إن هو إلا ذكر للعالمين لمن شاء منكم أن يستقيم وما تشاءون إلا أن يشاء الله رب العالمين آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Thank you, Brother Bas, for the recitation. Inshallah, we'll be continuing with Brother Muhammad reciting a few stanzas of poetry. Brother Muhammad, whenever you're ready.
محمد وآل محمد صلوات
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
محمد وآل محمد.
If you want, you can share your screen.
I'm sorry, what?
If you want to share your screen, you can.
Oh, okay.
Or you can just go ahead if it's not aligned. Okay, thank you.
محمد وآل محمد صلوات.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
سنو سکینہ سے غم کا پیام اے بابا ہمارے چل گئے سارے خیام اے بابا کہاں کہاں ہو نہ جانے قیام اے بابا ہے وجہ زیست تمہارا ہی نام اے بابا اسیر ہو کے چلی ہوں سلام اے بابا یہاں سے جاتی ہوں زندان شام اے بابا اسیر ہو کے چلی ہوں سلام اے بابا ہے سر پہ خاک بھی غم بھی ہے اور بکا بھی ہے کم سنی بھی مصیبت بھی اور جفا بھی ہے پھوپھی کے ساتھ رسن میں میرا گلا بھی ہے ان آفتوں سے گزرنے کا حوصلہ بھی ہے اسیر ہو کے چلی ہوں سلام اے بابا. اس انتہائی مصیبت کی انتہا بھی نہیں، گزر گئی ہے قیامت مگر گلا بھی نہیں. پھوپھی کے سر پہ کفن کے لیے ردا بھی نہیں، اور آج ہوش میں بیمار کربلا بھی نہیں. اسیر ہو کے چلی ہوں سلام اے بابا. نہ پوچھو حالت بیمار کربلا بابا، ہمارے ہیں یہی سالار قافلہ بابا. خوشی سے سہ گئے ہر ظلم ہر جفا بابا، ہے آج شام کی منزل کا مرحلہ بابا. اسیر ہو کے چلی ہوں سلام اے بابا. ہمارا کرب و بلا میں قیام ہو نہ سکا، تمہارے دفن کا بھی انتظام ہو نہ سکا. پڑے ہیں خاک پہ کچھ احترام ہو نہ سکا، وہ خوف ہے کہ ادا بھی سلام ہو نہ سکا. اسیر ہو کے چلی ہوں سلام اے بابا. سنا ہے شام کا دربار جب بھرا ہوگا، یزید کا سر دربار سامنا ہوگا. میرا تو بھائی بھی زنجیر سے بندھا ہوگا، پھوپھی جو پہنچے گی دربار میں تو کیا ہوگا. اسیر ہو کے چلی ہوں سلام اے بابا. ابھی سے شام کو جانے کی ابتدا دیکھو، رسن سے گھٹتا ہے بابا میرا گلا دیکھو. سروں سے بیویوں کے چھین لی ردا دیکھو، یہ ابتدا ہے تو کیا ہوگی انتہا دیکھو. اسیر ہو کے چلی ہوں سلام اے بابا. غموں سے اب تو یوں ہی شام میں بسر ہوگی، نہ جانے اپنی رہائی کی کب خبر ہوگی. نہ اس خرابے میں تا دیر اب بسر ہوگی، سکینہ مر گئی زندان میں خبر ہوگی. اسیر ہو کے چلی ہوں سلام اے بابا. یہ میرا آخری اب تو سلام لو بابا، جو ہو سکے تو گلا کے کھول دو بابا. ضرور آنا بلاؤں گی آپ کو بابا، دعا کرو مجھے ایذا نہ اور ہو بابا. اسیر ہو کے چلی ہوں سلام اے بابا. اے اب بھی پیش نظر واقعات کرب و بلا، وہی ہے شمر کا خنجر وہی ہے شے کا گلا. وہی ہے شام کا بازار اور وہی کوفہ، عروج اب بھی سکینہ کی آ رہی ہے صدا. اسیر ہو کے چلی ہوں سلام اے بابا. یہاں سے جاتی ہوں زندان شام اے بابا، اسیر ہو کے چلی ہوں سلام اے بابا.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Thank you, Brother Muhammad. So before we begin, just a reminder that we will have a litany at the end. So feel free to stay on. And tonight and for tomorrow night, we are very fortunate to have Sheikh Jafar with us. So please recite a salawat as I invite him to start the speech. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali.
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين. الحمد لله الذي جعل الحمد مفتاحا لذكره وسببا للمزيد من فضله ودليلا على آلائه وعظمته. ثم الصلاة والسلام على خير خلقه سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد، اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد، وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين، لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين، أرواحنا له فداء. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. فليقاتل في سبيل الله الذين يشرون الحياة الدنيا بالآخرة، ومن يقاتل في سبيل الله فيقتل أو يغلب فسوف نؤتيه أجرا عظيما. صدق الله العلي العظيم. First and foremost, I give my condolences to each of you on the occasion which we are commemorating. And this is the aftermath of the martyrdom of Imam Hussein, his companions, and his Ahlul Bayt alayhim salatu wassalam. The lectures that I have been speaking about, I know that there's a number of lectures that you've heard, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all of your ibadat in listening to the azaa of Abi Abdullah Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam. For this year, I've chosen a topic called empathy, or Karbala, between empathy and justice. And my focus has been on how our love for Imam Hussein and how our connection to Imam Hussein is a connection that is not simply an emotional connection, or at least it should not end just simply with an emotional connection. And that's why empathy in itself, it refers to this social and emotional skill of connecting, meaning that when a person has true empathy for those individuals that they are connecting with, then that causes them to actually act and to do something to support the cause of that individual. So if we truly have empathy for Imam Hussein, his cause and his mission, then that will lead us to a point of establishing justice. The very thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he has commanded the believers to do. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kunu qawwamina bil qist. O you who believe, be those individuals who establish justice. And that has led me to kind of revisit as well one of the topics that I had spoke about roughly in 2015. I spoke about the concept and the idea of justice in Islam. And as it relates to empathy, I had to come back and revisit that idea and that concept of justice, particularly in the context of empathy. And with that, it helps, at least it helped me and perhaps those who have listened to my speeches or followed them, to understand the relationship between empathy and justice, a relationship that quite often, particularly in Western scholarship, has not been fleshed out that thoroughly. And some have even questioned that, is it possible that within justice, there can be empathy, that you can connect and feel another's pain and identify with that and still establish justice? This has been a question. And what I have found very interesting when I revisited that concept of justice in Islam, and particularly as it relates to empathy and compassion, we see that Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi wasalam himself, he addresses this in the letter that he wrote to Malik Ashtar when he appointed Malik Ashtar as governor over Egypt. Before Imam Ali alayhi even speaks about the concept and the topic of justice, he tells Malik Ashtar that he has to have compassion in his heart and love for the citizens, those people who are under his governance. In that letter, Imam Ali, he says, وَأَشْعِرْ قَلْبَكَ الرَّحْمَةَ لِلرَّعِيَّةِ وَالْمَحَبَّةَ لَهُمْ. So have compassion in your heart for those individuals who are your citizens, who are beneath your governance. Have love for them and be kind towards them. And he tells Malik Ashtar, he says, and realize that there are two types of individuals who will be there under your authority. He says, إِمَّا أَخٌ لَكَ فِي الدِّينِ أَوْ نَذِيرٌ لَكَ فِي الْخَلْقِ. And those individuals will either be someone who is your co-religionist. Again, that person says, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, just like you, Malik Ashtar, meaning that they're Muslim. Then there are those individuals who don't say that. They're not Muslims. Egypt was on the outskirts of the Islamic, you could say, states or nations at that time, Islamic territory at that time. And so there were Christians, there were people from the Byzantine Empire who eventually came in and they lived in Egypt. So if they were not Muslim like you were, Malik Ashtar, at least they are your equal in creation. They're your brothers in creation. So they deserve also that rahmah, that compassion that's in your heart, that love that's in your heart, because they are under your authority, under your citizenship. So Imam Ali alayhi wasallam, he starts with this, and then he goes to this idea and concept of ansif Allah wa ansif nafsik. He says, and then you should be just, establish justice, be just for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala against yourself, wa ansif nas min nafsika, and be just towards people, even against yourself, even against those individuals who are in your society, who are your citizens. Maybe you incline towards some of them more than others. And he says, and these are the people that you have to start with implementing justice. Just as we see the example of Imam Ali alayhi wasallam with regards to his own brother Aqil. When Aqil, he requested a bit more or an advance from the Baytul Mal, Imam Ali, he put a coal in his hand. He says, no, well, if I give you more, then know that this is not just, it is not right. And the heat of that coal is nothing with regards to the heat of the hellfire. So that justice, first and foremost, must be established among them. And if we see that in Karbala, you have these two armies, two groups of individuals, one army that was led by Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam, and the other by Umar ibn Sa'd. We see them on the battlefield. And this is an aspect that we must understand, because one of the things I spoke about, as I said, in 2015 was justice, and justice has different aspects, different dimensions. One of those dimensions is social justice. And in order to establish social justice, at times you need, again, you need the law, you need the Sharia, you need a law that guides the society towards justice and being upright in their affairs and their interactions. And then at times there may be some disruption in the society. At that point, then one has to, what we may call today, to police that society, or police a group of individuals in order to maintain order. And that's pretty much what the armies were for at the time. And so supposedly the army, as we know of, the army of Yazid, supposedly the Khalifa, that he's going forth to, I guess, perhaps protect this interest. And the thing is, what is that interest that he's trying to protect? Because Imam Hussein alayhi salatu is also moving forward to, again, to stand and establish something. And what Imam Hussein, as we know, is there to stand and establish justice. And what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he states, especially about engagement, when one has to engage, because sometimes there are conflicts that happen. And when those conflicts happen within society, then there needs to be some sort of protocol. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he alludes to that protocol in the Quran, verse 74 of Surah An-Nisa, so chapter 4 of the Quran, verse 74, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, فَلْيُقَاتِلْ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ الَّذِينَ يَشْرُونَ الْحَيَاةَ الدُّنْيَا بِالْآخِرَةِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he lays out the first protocol for us. And this verse and the surrounding verses or verses before that speaks about, again, those individuals during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that they were the munafiqeen, they were the hypocrites. And whenever the Prophet called them forth to defend Islam, to defend the boundaries of Islam, when it was being encroached upon by different individuals, the mushrikeen, when they were challenging the Muslim society and they wanted to destroy it. So the Prophet says, no, we have to go forth. We have to defend the boundaries. We have to defend our, again, Medina. We have to defend these. So the Munafiqeen, they were lackluster in going forth to defend Islam or to defend the Prophet of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to defend the Muslims and the mu'mineen. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, he gives us the first criterion. And again, this is different from any type of just war for gaining power. That's not what it's for. And that's not why the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he fought any of his battles. And this is very clear. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives this command, he says, فَلْيُقَاتِلْ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. So yes, you fight with, you stand against those individuals. And which individuals? الَّذِينَ يَشْرُونَ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا بِالْآخِرَةِ. Those individuals who have bought this world. In other words, they are greedy for what is in this world and they forget about the akhirah. So in other words, the wars or that conflict, at least on the side of the Prophet of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and anyone who walks in those footsteps, it is not to get material gain, not to gain landmass, not to gain or subjugate any other country and bring them under their authority. No, quite the opposite. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, if those individuals have sold their akhirah, they want nothing of the akhirah. Why? Because their entire focus is on this dunya. They're focusing on the greed of this dunya, sucking in as much as they can. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, then you stand before them. You, again, defend yourselves. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَن يُقَاتِلْ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. And whoever does this, whoever fights in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to do this, not for this dunya, not for the gain of this dunya, but for the akhirah. And again, verse 75, it'll explain more about it, that where that empathy comes in, because it talks about the mustada'afin, those individuals who are weak, those individuals who are disenfranchised, those individuals who, again, would be oppressed under those folks who are just trying to grab up, making a land grab for things. So you stand to defend them, and you stand against those individuals who are encroaching upon the rights of others. Again, this verse is not about fighting non-Muslims. No, it says anyone. Those individuals, يَشْتَرُونَ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا بِالْآخِرَةِ. So those individuals who go forth and who fight in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala based on that principle, فَيُقْتَلْ أَوْ يَغْلِبْ. So whether they are martyred in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or they are victorious in their battle or in their defense, فَسَوْفَ نُؤْتِيهِ أَجْرًا عَظِيمًا. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, then we will give them a great reward. This is one of the things that we see and we are taught in the Battle of Karbala. Because when we look at the uprising of Imam Hussein alayhi wasalam, as he said, I am going forth to correct the ills in the ummah of Jatti. So correct the ills in the nation and the people who claim to follow my grandfather. Because individuals came forth to rule or to kind of lead the ummah, but they weren't based on these principles, these Quranic principles, or the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Imam Hussein said, I'm going forth to set this right. And one of the things that we see for sure that how this was not the case, that in Karbala, when Umar bin Sa'd, he was approached, and he was someone who knew the Ahlul Bayt. He is someone who himself, he was born in Medina. His father was a companion of Rasulullah. And he knew Imam Hassan and Hussein alayhi wasallam. He actually, Umar ibn Sa'd, he actually migrated to Kufa from Medina at the time that Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi wasallam, he moved the government from, or the seat of the government, the capital, from Medina to Kufa. And that's how Umar ibn Sa'd, he ended up in Kufa. And so he knew very well who Imam Hussein was. And at one point he was asked that, well, why are you fighting in this? Why don't you put things down and join Imam Hussein? Even Imam Hussein alayhi wasallam, before the battle even began, one of the nights he sat with Umar ibn Sa'd and said, listen, you know who I am, you know me very well, you know my father. He says, and you should not be on the side that you're on. You need to come and you need to stand with us. But Umar ibn Sa'd, he gave every excuse. Well, if I do this, then, my house will be taken from me. My land will be taken from me. My family will be killed. And Imam Hussein, he says, no, we'll take care of this. I'll make sure that those things are that you'll get in exchange for something much better with Allah or not. But Umar bin Sa'd, he would not come and join with Imam Hussein. Even when one of the companions of Imam Hussein, he spoke with Umar ibn Sa'd, Umar ibn Sa'd told him, he says, well, if I come and I fight with Imam Hussein, he says, either, I'm making this choice that either I will be on his side and be killed, or if he's, if I end up going back, then I will be killed. Or if I live, then I will become the governor of Ray. This was what is current day, basically Tehran, what we know of. It's one part of it now. It's called Ray Shahri Ray, but at that time, if you want to understand where Ray is basically around Tehran. So Umar ibn Sa'd, for the sake of this world and this dunya, he decided not to join Imam Hussein alayhi wasallam and stay on the side that he was upon. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that فَلْيُقَاتِلْ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ الَّذِينَ يَشْرُونَ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا بِالْآخِرَةِ. A person who sold his akhirah for the dunya, that he wants nothing from the dunya. Again, this is Umar ibn Sa'd who is making that choice. Again, his choice was not like that of Hur. Hur said, yes, I see myself having to choose between Jannati wa nar, between heaven and hell. He says, and I will not choose hell over anything. Umar ibn Sa'd, on the other hand, says, oh, well, I see myself having to make my choice between having some power, some governance in this world, Shahruray, or being killed. Being killed. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, look, that quality of wanting this dunya is one that, again, the believers, those who are standing and fighting for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Those individuals who are establishing or trying to establish justice as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He commands all the believer, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kunu qawwamina bil qist shuhada'a lillah. Those individuals who are trying to establish justice, at times if they come into that conflict, then they should know very clearly that who they are standing against. If those individuals are adamant about selling their hereafter, they have no concern and care for the hereafter, only for this world, only for the greed of this world, then you stand firmly against them. And that's what Imam Hussein he did. And not only did he do that, he again assured that, look, these individuals, they don't want anything of the akhirah. At so many different junctures, Imam Hussein alayhi wasallam offered them peace, offered them forgiveness, tried to get them to, again, change themselves so that their akhirah would be good. But they rejected it all because they had love of this world in their heart. Something that we see Imam Sadiq alayhi wasallam, he states this, that person, man ahabba dunya, that person who loves dunya, then what happens is that the fanasiya فذهب. So من أحب الدنيا ذهب خوف الآخرة من قلبي. So that person who loves the dunya, what happens is the fear of the akhirah leaves from them. The fear from the punishment of the akhirah, it leaves from their heart. This is one of the things that, as we spoke in one of our earlier lectures, you can go back and look, that it erodes this idea and concept of empathy and compassion. Because you're no longer looking at an individual with compassion. You're no longer connecting with those individuals. This is why, again, the army of Yazid, that army that's commanded by Umar ibn Sa'd, when he was looking at Imam Hussein, knowing very well who Imam Hussein was, when he's looking at, again, all of those individuals who were coming forth, the family of the Ahlul Bayt, alayhim afsalatu wasalam, they had no rahmah in their heart for them. Why? Because what replaced that rahmah was their love for this dunya. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he points this out in Surah Al-A'raf, that how some people, they think, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he describes these individuals as akhlada ila dunya, akhlada ila al-ard, that they connected themselves to this world as if they were as if they will live forever. Akhlada ila al-ardi wattaba'a hawa. So they confided and they attach themselves to this world as if they will live forever. And by doing so, again, the fear of the hereafter has left their heart. Or as another very wise statement that is has been stated by Imam Ali alayhi wasallam, he says that individual, man ahabbaha, whoever loves this dunya, awrathathu al-kibr, that person who loves this dunya, then it will make them arrogant. وَمَنْ إِتْمَأَنَّ إِلَيْهَا رَكَّبَتْهُ الْغَفْلَةِ. And whoever has certainty in this dunya, meaning that they think that, again, life is simply about this dunya. Life is simply about what one gains in this world, what their status is in this world. Then what will happen? Those individuals will become a ghafil. They will be heedless of Allah's bounty. They will be heedless of thinking and connecting with others. And this is why Imam Ali alayhi wasallam, again, very beautifully, as we stated, that again, in governance, at times you have to have someone, or you have to have a group of individuals who, these individuals, they will, again, maintain security. If we want to put it in that term, maintain security within that society, secure the borders. And so this is why Imam Ali, in that letter to Malik Ashtar, he classifies one group of individuals These group of individuals, he says, the army. And look at the description that Imam Ali, he gives Malaka Ashtar with regards to that individual who will command your army. And again, this helps us to understand, again, these two armies that's on the battlefield. Which one was fighting to establish justice, and which one was fighting simply for this dunya? Which one was abiding by that command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where he says, فَلْيُقَاتِلْ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ الَّذِينَ يَشْرُونَ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا بِالْآخِرَةِ. That fight or resist or stand in resistance for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to those individuals who have sold their akhirah for this dunya. So Imam Ali, he gives that description to Malaka Ashtar. He says, فَوَلِّي مِن جُنُودِكَ أَنْسَحَهُمْ فِي نَفْسِكَ لِلَّهِ وَلِرَسُولِهِ وَلِإِمَامِكَ. So first of all, he says that the person that you put in the command of your army, and again, this is very telling about the situation in Karbala and who was commanding the different armies. So Imam Ali, he says, put in command of your army an individual who will, again, help you or basically advise you, fi nafsik. Again, advise you of yourself, one who will be a well-wisher of you for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Lillahi, wali rasulihi, wali imamik. For the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for the sake of the messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and for the sake of your imam. So that individual who is commanding you, again, is upholding the principles that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed in the Quran. And he's reminding you. So this commander of your army, of your security detail, again, he's someone who is connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to the sirat of Rasulullah, and of course, and to the sirat of Ahlul Bayt, the imams in the side, the rightful imam. You have to have an imam. And let's say even on that side, if they thought, na'udhu billah, that Yazid was an imam, and that's why Imam Hussein alayhi salatu, he says, inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un wa ala al-islam as-salam. He says that, you know, if people are going to follow Yazid, then he says you might as well say farewell to Islam. So that individual who should command the army, that your security detail, should remind you of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, should remind you of the path of Rasulullah, should remind you of the path of the Imam al-Haq, the rightful Imam. وَأَنْقَاهُمْ حَبِيبًا. SubhanAllah. He says, and this is the individual who is the chastest at heart. Again, a person who has compassion in his heart. Just as Imam Ali alayhi, he told Malik Ashtar himself, he said that, look, in order to govern properly, in order to establish justice, again, you have to have compassion in your heart for your citizens. So even the person who is running the security also has to have that. And qahum habiban, the one whose heart is chaste and can encompass love. Wa afdalahum hilman. And that individual who is, again, has hilm, has what we can say, endurance. He has, again, kindness. He's not someone who is irrational. وَأَفْضَلَهُمْ حِلْمًا مِمَّن يُبْطِئُ عَنِ الْغَضَبِ. And he's explaining what this hilm is, what this forbearance is. So the one who has the greatest forbearance, whereby he does not get angry easily. يُبْطِئُ عَنِ الْغَضَبِ. That he is the slowest at getting angry. Doesn't mean that that individual is weak. No, it means that that individual, because he is slow at getting angry, he's going to be rational. He's going to judge properly. He's not going to be hasty in his or her decision. وَيَسْتَرِيحُ إِلَى الْعُذْرِ. And also is open to an excuse that, okay, well, perhaps someone did something by mistake. Simply they did something and right away you shoot them or you cut them down. Again, this is what we see from Muslim ibn Aqila, rahmatullah alayh, that when he was hiding in the storage area of the house of Hani, when Ibn Ziyad came to visit Hani, and Hani was saying, oh, well, maybe Muslim can come out and just kill him, and then all of this will be over. But Muslim ibn Aqil says, no, this is not the way of Rasulullah. This is not the way that Imam Ali alayhi salam would do things. So Muslim ibn Aqil, he was raised in the house of Imam Ali. So that individual does not get angry quickly. And again, when we look at these qualities that Imam Ali alayhi salam is pointing out, again, look at what's happening today, even around the world. Quite often those individuals who are in charge of security detail, they're in charge of military army, again, their qualities are quite opposite of what Imam Ali alayhi salam is pointing out. So that person, yastarihu ila al-udhr, he gives the benefit of the doubt. He lets people make excuses. وَيَرْأَفُ بِالضُّعَفَاءِ, and that person is kind towards the weak, towards those individuals who are disenfranchised. وَيَنْبُو عَلَى الْأَقْوِيَاءِ, he's very strict with those individuals who are, you could say, strong, who, again, they maybe have some sort of power. In other words, he's balancing, he's creating the balance so that things will be just, putting things in its place. Simply because a person wills power, whether it's like economic or some sort of influence, is the power of his tribe, then that individual is very strict with them in order not to fall under their influence. No, he has to be a person who is upholding or maintaining justice for the sake of whoever he is working for, the governor, because this is the security guy. وَمِمَّنْ لَا يُثِيرُهُ الْعُنْفِ, and that individual is not someone who gives rise to violence. Not someone who's, oh, well, I'm just going to take out all of these individuals. No, that person is not someone who is violent. وَلَا يَقْعُدُهُ بِالضَّعْفِ, nor does that person step down or cower or show any weakness, or kind of set himself aside because, oh, well, we are, or appear to be weak, or we are outnumbered. And again, that's the stance that Imam Hussein alayhi salam took, that, oh, well, okay, we're 72 against 4,000. So we're not going to sit down simply because we're outnumbered. No, we still make our stance because it's a stance for justice. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he stated in the Quran about that stance that the believers have to take. He says that وَمَن يُقَاتِلْ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ فَيُقْتَلْ أَوْ يَغْلِبْ فَسَوْفَ نُؤْتِيهِ أَجْرًا عَظِيمًا. So those individuals who stand for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who, again, face off the enemy for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whether they are victorious in their stance or whether they are martyred in that stance, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give them a great reward for that. Give them a great reward. So this is the stance we see that Imam Hussein alayhi salam took on the plains of Karbala, took on the day of Ashura, till it led to his martyrdom. And thereafter, the women and children, they were put in chains and they were taken as captives after the shahadat of Imam Hussein, his companions, and Ahlul Bayt. It's said that before the Ahlul Bayt were ushered into Kufa, that they were kept outside of Kufa for a couple of days. They were kept outside of Kufa, and it was until things were being prepared. The Ibn Ziyad was preparing. They were trying to celebrate this victory. But in those moments, in the aftermath of Karbala, one of the companions of Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib, Amir al-Mu'mineen, by the name of Taramah ibn Adi. Taramah ibn Adi, he was a poet. He is someone who had met Imam Hussein on the way to Karbala. Taramah was in Kufa. He left out of Kufa actually before the battle began. And this is around the time that Imam Hussein was leaving from Mecca. So that Taramah met him on the way, met Imam Hussein on the way. And he realized that, oh, this is the moment that Rasulullah had been talking about, the moment when Amir al-Mu'mineen himself, he said that his son would be martyred in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Taramah, when he encountered Imam Hussein, he had an amanat, he had some things that he had to take to his family. So he took the permission of Imam Hussein that if you give me permission to go and to take this amanat, this money to my family, I will give that to them, and then I will hasten back to you to be on your side, to defend the household of Rasulullah. So Taramah was given permission by Imam Hussein that go and deliver what you have to deliver. And then Imam Hussein said, and we will meet you later. So Taramah, he left. And he came back to Karbala, again, going to Kufa. He's the one who guided Imam Hussein, or at least outlined the path to them towards Kufa. And this is before they met up with Hur, outlined the path for them. And then as he came back from delivering his amana, by the time he reached to Karbala, the battle was over. So Taramah, when he encountered the battlefield, and this is before the bodies had been buried, Taramah, he sat between the bodies, the headless bodies of Imam Hussein and his companions. And there he wept and he cried for the Ahlul Bayt. He wept for the martyrs on the plains of Karbala. Then according to the Maqtal of Abi Mikhnaf, one of the Maqtals that we have, the accounts of the atrocities of Karbala, he said Taramah, he narrated this scene, this vision that he had, that as he sat and he wept for Imam Hussein and the Shuhada of Karbala, he said that he can see that there were some people coming on horses, some men coming on horses towards the Shuhada. He says these men, they were wearing black and they were coming. And as they dismounted from their horse, they came down, their horses, they came down. And one of those men began to say, and he realized that from what was being stated, that this was the Prophet of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And with him were the Anbiya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He saw this vision, and he says, and it was so realistic. He says that I saw them, and then as I saw them, the Prophet of Allah, he said, Ya waladi, ya Hussein, قتلت عطشانا. Oh my son, Oh Hussein, you've been killed while you were thirsty, and the water was cut off from your camp. May these oppressors be cursed. These oppressors who went against Allah. Mira beta, tumhare qatl hona, or tum par paniki bandish, unzalimun ki Khudavan ta'ala ke khilaf jura'at hai, that these individuals, they went against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Tarimah, he said that as he was looking at this, as he was watching the Prophet of Allah crying, he was watching the Anbiya crying over the scene of Karbala. He said he saw the Prophet of Allah extend his hands towards Kufa. And he says, and that's when he realized that the heads of Imam Hussein, the heads of the Shuhada of Karbala, that they had been taken to Kufa. He said the head of the Shuhada had been taken to Kufa. And then he said the Prophet of Allah, he began to call out to the Anbiya, Ya Akhi, Ya Musa, Ya Akhi, Ya Isa, انظروا ماذا فعل الظالمين ماذا فعل الظالمون بابني. He says, oh Isa, oh Musa, that look what these oppressors, what they have done to my Hussein, what they have done to my son. Ey mera bhai Musa, ey mera bhai Isa, apne dekhte ke un baghi zalimun ne mera bete ke sat kia zulm kia, that look at what these individuals have done. May they be cut off. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cut them off from my shafa'a. Harramahullah min shafa'ati yawm al-qiyamah. And the Prophet of Allah, he prayed that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will cut them away from my shafa'a on the day of judgment. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا وأي منقلب ينقلبون. اللهم بحق هذا المجلس الحسيني اغفر ذنوبنا واستر عيوبنا وقضي حوائجنا واشفي مرضانا ورحم أمواتنا وعجل فرج مولانا صاحب العصر والزمان واجعلنا من أعوانه وانصاره والمستشهدين بين يديه وتحت لوائه بحق محمد وآله الطاهرين. Martin Hussein.
زينب الكبرى تنادي نور عيني يا حسن أين أنت يا عمادي يا ابن خير المرسلين. زينب الكبرى تنادي نور عيني يا حسن أين أنت يا عمادي يا ابن خير المرسلين. طعنوا بك فؤادي وقلوب المؤمنين. طعنوا بك فؤادي وقلوب المؤمنين. ثم غاروا بالجياد فجروا حقدا دافين. ثم غاروا بالجياد فجروا حقدا دافين. هيا قوموا للجهاد يا لثارات الحسين. زينب الكبرى تنادي نور عيني يا حسين أين أنت يا عمادي يا ابن خير المرسلين. طعنوا بك فؤادي وقلوب المؤمنين. ثم غاروا بالجياد فجروا حقدا دافين. هيا قوموا للجهاد يا لثارات الحسين. يا زينب ودعيه بنحره قبليه وقلديه الحسام والتميه بالجبين. يا زينب ودعيه بنحره قبليه وقلديه الحسام والتميه بالجبين في وصية الزهراء يا لثراك الحسين زينب الكبرى تنادي نور عيني يا حسين أين أنت يا عمادي يا ابن خير المرسلين طعنوا بك فؤادي وقلوب المؤمنين ثم غاروا بالجياد فجروا حقدا دافين هياكم للجهاد يا لثرات الحسين يا ذبيح كربلاء والرمضاء والتفوف صرت وحدي بالعراء يا ليومنا العسوف يا ذبيح كربلاء والرمضاء والتفوف صرت وحدي بالعراء يا يومنا العسوف أبكي لأهل البلاء أندوب النجم الخاسوف أبكي لأهل البلاء أندوب النجم الخاسوف زينب الكبرى تنادي نور عيني يا حسين أين أنت يا عمادي يا ابن خير المرسلين زينب الكبرى تنادي نور عيني يا حسين أين أنت يا عمادي يا ابن خير المرسلين حسين حسين
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Inshallah, tomorrow we'll start at 8:30 p.m. Salam.
عليكم السلام